welcome to my new YouTube channel. Just wanted to share a little story with you guys about how for most of my young adult life I was told I could not get pregnant, and surprise, I'm pregnant right away. So I always had really bad periods, just really uncomfortable, cramping, and a lot of bleeding, and my mom took me to, I guess it was my pediatrician when I was 15, and she told me I had low progesterone and that nothing to think about right now, but in the far future to think about it if I ever wanted to get pregnant. I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and people get pregnant there very young. It's not uncommon to have 1 to 2 kids before you graduate high school. It's just a weird cultural thing that I never understood. But I assume that's why she mentioned it when I was so young, but I'm not totally sure. So I always kept that in the back of my mind, and my periods kept getting worse. And I saw more of a specialist when I was like 16, and they did a transvaginal ultrasound, I think that's what it's called, where it's instead of on top of the belly like a typical ultrasound that you think about, it's more of like a prod that goes inserted vaginally. And so the doctor did one of those and said that it looked like I probably have endometriosis, and that's one of the bigger reasons that I'm having bad periods. And then the doctor also told me, and my mother was there at the time, that I had a heart-shaped uterus. Instead of like more of an oval, it had sort of a heart deviation here, and that would make it hard to carry a baby to term, and that my endometriosis would probably make it really hard for me to get pregnant. So I'm now 31, I'll be 32 soon. I've since 16 thought, I don't know, it would be hard for me to have a baby, it would be this long process, and that I'd probably have to do IVF, and even then I don't know if it would work. And so I've kind of always been a little, not depressed about it, but because I didn't think it was such an option, it's nothing I really was ready to start trying for. During quarantine, my husband and I were just kind of both around the house a lot. We were living part-time in New York City, and then we have a house in the Catskills. We bought the house in the Catskills last year in April, so it's been just over a year. And the house was built in the 70s and just needs a lot of work. So if you see me filming and there's some weird stuff like patches on the wall, it's because we're working on the house. So it's been a slow process, and we also are going to post some videos on our other YouTube, and I will link to that in case you are also renovating a house and you just need some tips, or you're curious. I don't know. Before we bought a house, we watched renovation videos because we enjoyed them. So during quarantine, we went to Mexico right before the pandemic hit. So we were in Mexico like March 16th, and we came back, actually we were, let's see, around the 16th. We were only there for a couple of days, and I was actually going to stay longer and meet my mom there. And then the pandemic hit, and we were just watching the news and really freaked out because obviously we've never experienced something like this before. So I went ahead and just came home early. I would have liked to stay and enjoyed my time and fulfilled my reservations that I made, but I was really scared. And so we came back, and New York City was on total lockdown. So we just came up to our house in upstate New York to get away from the craziness, and I'm really glad we did that because it's quiet up here, and also I can work on the house more if I'm here, and we would really like to get it finished, even though it's been taking significantly longer than we thought. So we came up here, and you know, just we're thinking about all the time that we're spending together and at home, and just randomly I asked Eric if he would like to try having a baby. So I bought a bunch of ovulation sticks. I will put a link to the brand that I used. It's the STIX, STIX brand. And I decided to go off of birth control. I have it in my calendar. once we finally decided it was a good time to start trying, I stopped taking my birth control May 12th. I had just had my period, so I wasn't really expecting... I knew your period can start once you stop taking birth control pills, but I wasn't sure since I just had it if maybe it would start my period, and it did. So my period started on Sunday the 17th of May. It only lasted a few days, like 3 days, which is not my typical period. It usually lasts forever, like a full 7 days of bleeding, and 4 of them are super heavy and just really painful. And it really wasn't a bad period, so I think it just was my hormones re-regulating and my body just adjusting to not being on a hormone contraceptive. So I bought the ovulation sticks, and I was using just a tracker for getting pregnant, but I didn't really feel like it was super accurate because I had just gone off birth control. If I had not been on birth control, it might have been a little more helpful, but I didn't really know my cycle. I don't really know how many days it is. Typically, with birth control, I had such bad periods that my doctor said it was okay to miss like every couple of periods. If I didn't want to have them, I could just keep taking the pills rather than going on to the placebos. So a lot of times I wouldn't have a period for 3 months. And honestly, that was great. So I used the tracker, and I started taking the ovulation tests when the apps were predicting I would be ovulating. And I felt like it was a little early and the tests were coming back negative. So when I finally had a positive ovulation test, it was June 2nd. And we did the deed that day. Didn't do anything special. I didn't like lay in bed. Afterwards, we actually got in the hot tub afterwards, and that made me think that somehow it would kill off his sperm and it wouldn't work. So I was really honestly prepared to take more ovulation tests. I went to the doctor on the 11th of June because I just wanted to see where I was at physically for having a baby, and if they could confirm any of these diagnoses that doctors had given me before, telling me I couldn't really have babies easily. So I went to the doctor on the 11th, and they took a pregnancy test. It was negative. It was just a pee test, and set me up to do some x-rays of contrast on my uterus just to see the actual shape, and just a few things to just see where I'm at and see if I could get pregnant. And I knew my period was supposed to start on either the 13th or the 14th, based on a 28-day cycle. And I was really, really in a bad mood. On the 10th, I was extremely moody. I knew I was, and so I was trying to avoid Eric because I just was not in a good place. I thought maybe my birth control was just making me kind of crazy, or being off of it rather was making me a little crazy. And so I was raging. I can't even explain. It was really awful. By the time I went to the doctor on the 11th, I wasn't as, moody, and I felt better, but I felt bloated. I felt crampy. I felt like, yeah, my period's gonna start basically tomorrow. On the evening of the 12th, Friday the 12th, I thought for sure it's gonna happen, so I put a panty liner in, and the next morning there was like a spot of blood, but it was blood that I had never had before, so that was kind of interesting. And I'd heard about implantation bleeding, and I was starting to Google it and see, is it that, or is just my period starting? And honestly, I don't know, I felt like I was pregnant, and I know that sounds crazy, but I could feel it. It was really weird. That day, that Friday, my nipples were just like on fire, and everything that could have been a symptom for my body just returning to a normal state after being on birth control is also kind of a symptom of being pregnant, or at least conceiving, and I just couldn't tell, honestly. So I kind of got really excited, and I waited like half of the day to see if my period would just start, but nothing started. I put in a tampon to see if the bleeding just hadn't like gotten heavy enough to start coming out, and the tampon came out totally clean, like no blood at all. And so I convinced my husband to take me to the drugstore, and I got the First Response 3-pack of pregnancy tests. Those are the 6 days sooner, so hopefully I was just, I don't know, hoping to know. I also wanted to go to a brewery, and things were just starting to open for outdoor seating, and I wanted to go with our friends on Saturday, so I wanted to know if I could drink or not. I wanted to know if it was safe. And I just kind of thought, well, it's just a safe bet to see the negative pregnancy test rather than regret drinking later. So as much as I was telling myself I am pregnant, the rational part of my brain was saying, like, there's no way. There's just no way. That would be insane. So I went and got the First Response pregnancy test, and I came home, rushed, and I took one. And I was on the phone with my mom telling her that I thought I might be pregnant. And she didn't believe me, which I wouldn't either. And I took the test, and I was kind of waiting I think it's 2 minutes with First Response. And I was waiting, and a faint line showed up. Really faint. I can add a picture of how faint it is, because you would not have known there was a faint line there unless you were really looking at it. And my husband really was like, that doesn't really look like a positive. It's probably just an error. And we Googled, if it's possible to be a false positive, but it really, the internet says if there's a faint line there, unless it's a really crappy pregnancy test and there's an evaporation line, it's positive. So that was my first positive pregnancy test. I'm going to end this video here. I am going to just do constant updates, more information about getting pregnant, how I've been feeling now that I am pregnant, purchases that I'll be making, what I'm going to be eating, the prenatals that I'm going to be taking, and then anything my doctor tells me. So I hope that you guys will subscribe, because I'm living up here in upstate New York, and there's really, during quarantine, it's really hard to make friends. And so I'm kind of hoping to build a bit of a community where you guys can comment and I will see it, respond, try to take advice, get some information from people. I've never been pregnant before. I don't have any kids, but I was a nanny in New York City for quite a few years. So I have experience with children. I've used a lot of kids' products. And I'm not totally out of the loop when it comes to babies and kids, but also I want to be a modern, eco-friendly mom, and it takes a village to raise a kid. So I'm just hoping you guys have some input, and if you have questions, I would love to answer them. So please subscribe, stay tuned. I realized I never introduced myself. My name is Jenny. I'm gonna go by JMac. Our last name starts with a Mac, and as much as I love branding with your name, I'm just gonna stick with the first half of our last name for branding. JMac for me, Jenny, EMac for Eric, and we are going to call the baby Mac. It's a little cheesy, but it's going to be our brand. So please subscribe and click the like button if you liked the video, and stay tuned for more stuff. Bye!